Welcome everybody, ladies and gentlemen, game number 8 of the World Chess Championship 2018, and I don't know if you can tell, but I'm pretty excited because this was an interesting game, much more interesting than game number 7. Today we had Caruana against Carlsen, and for the first time in the match, finally, I've been saying this for a while already, let's see the open Sicilian here, no more Rosso Limo, no more 3 bishop b5. Finally, Caruana goes for 3 d4, and this is the open Sicilian. And finally, we get to see what Carlsen had prepared here. And as expected, he goes for the Sveshnikov variation here with e5. So now knight db5, d6, and the first slight surprise, Caruana doesn't play the main line with bishop to g5, the absolute main line where there's a lot of theory, but instead he goes knight to d5. This threatens a fork on c7, so black is forced to take. White takes back, and here black has a choice between knight e7 and knight to b8. Carlsen goes for the later, knight b8, and white also has a choice here, c4 or a4, and Caruana goes a4. Let's have some general words about this kind of position, about this kind of pawn structure. With the exchange on d5, white has now a majority of pawns on the queen side, and that means he will play on that side of the board and push his pawns forward and try to make that majority count. Whereas black has this majority on the king side, this means he will play over here on the king side and hope to get an attack going against the white king by pushing his pawns forward, opening some files, and even sometimes sacrificing pawns. So you see already there's this dynamic imbalance in the position due to the pawn structure, and this means we're in for an exciting game. Now bishop e7, both sides keep developing, and now this was an interesting moment here. Caruana played a rare move, the move 12 bishop d2, and funnily enough at this point I was getting some messages because people were saying they're following your game here from June. And indeed, I had this not only in June, but also in August, but my August game is not in a database. But in June, I played in the Mitropa Cup against Czech player Tripnek Radček. And we had this exact line on the board because I was also having the same problem as maybe now Team Caruana, what to do against the Sveshnikov. And I found this knight d5 line, and I saw it was played by a lot of correspondence players. And it is quite interesting, also gives white some good results. So I decided to try it out myself, and it really leads to some very rich positions with imbalances, as we already talked about, due to a pawn structure. So I thought a good way to play for win. And indeed, that game against Radček was absolutely wild, and I also covered it here on my channel. Some of you might have already saw it, or might have already seen it. So bishop d2, what's the point? Now after f5, we see the point white goes a5, and after a6, which followed in the game, white is able to retreat to a3 and having the pawn still protected on a5. So this is why bishop d2 was played, to be able to retreat with the knight to a3. In my 2 games, in the first one, Radček played knight f6, that's an interesting move, and the other game continued with f4. Once again, also very plausible move because black would like to advance his pawns there. And in fact, I think that f4 is the best move in the position, and this is also confirmed by the fact that recently a top correspondence player played this line with black here, rated over 2500 in correspondence chess. That's really high. So he played it as well and hold a draw here, so I think f4 is the right choice. What I don't like about a6 is that it really drives the knight to better squares anyway. The knight is actively placed on b5. It looks active at least, but it feels like it's better placed on other squares anyway. So now white goes knight a3, and next is knight to c4. Carlsen plays e4, knight c4, knight to e5. Now white doesn't want to trade these knights because that would give black a pretty strong pawn center. So instead, Caruana goes knight b6, hitting the rook. And now some people were hoping for some very romantic chess here, sacrificing a full rook with f4. This is interesting. And if white takes on a8, then black indeed would develop a very strong attack with f3. But, well, we're in the 21st century and not in the 19th century where people simply accepted all the sacrifices. Otherwise, it was deemed impolite if you don't take what your opponent is offering. But nowadays it's not like that, and here white can actually take on f4 first, and after rook takes f4 only now take on a8, and there's no black attack and white is up in exchange, so this is no good for black. So rook b8, the normal move was played, and now white goes f4 himself to stop f4 from black. Black takes en passant to keep the strong knight on e5, and white takes back with the bishop, and now you can see that not so quickly there will be a strong attack with the black pawns. And funnily enough, I still had this position in my file in ChessBase, and I analyzed 4 different moves here. But guess what? Carlsen didn't play any of them, which was surprising to me, and indeed Carlsen didn't make a good choice here. First, let me tell you what moves I covered in my file: f4, bishop f6, knight d7, and bishop d7. All these moves are sensible, and white in most lines gets like a slight edge, so it's a little bit better. Anyway, not much would happen after any of those moves, I would say. Black is very much in the game, but Carlsen played the move g5, which is a little bit crazy, you could say, and it's not a good move. Let's be honest. It's not a good move because it weakens the black king long term, obviously by advancing this pawn, and there's no way back. Pawns cannot move back, so this king will now feel unsafe as long as their queen's on the board, pretty much, and black's not getting anything going here with his pawns anytime soon. So there were speculations whether Carlsen maybe confused lines a bit here, that he had looked at this f4, rook a4, now g5, which would be much more reasonable to play like that, and also bishop g5 is another decent move here. Maybe. It's not clear. Maybe Carlsen said something about this in the press conference, so it is still up to discussion what his idea was here. And Caruana, he played pretty quickly c4, so it seems like he still looked at g5 indeed, and this just shows you what an incredible preparation. I mean, not only, I'm sure, did he look at g5, but also all the other 4 moves that I mentioned, and this just goes to show, wow, what a preparation, and c4 is the best move. Now black goes f4, and now white puts the bishop on c3. And you see, white played first c4 and then bishop c3, so now he can follow up with c5 and undermine the knight on e5. So important point. Carlsen went bishop to f5, and now Caruana took his first long think in the game, actually 35 minutes. And the whole chess world was waiting if he would find the right and winning move here already. And he did. c5 is the correct move. It involves a pawn sacrifice, but white is getting incredible compensation for the pawn because the black king is so weak and this bishop is so well placed. After c5, the supercomputer in Norway already said +2 for white. So a winning advantage, you could say. And especially practically here, Caruana still had a lot of time on his clock, about an hour, whereas Carlsen was down to, let's say, 20-30 minutes, something like that, and still a lot of moves to be played. So it did not look good for the world champion. He took on f3. He has to take first on f3. He cannot take right away because the knight is hanging on e5. So black takes on f3 with check, and now he takes the pawn. And here Caruana fairly quickly played rook a1. Probably this was his intention already when calculating c5, but it is an inaccuracy. White keeps a large advantage, but there were better moves at his disposal. One of them is to move the rook one more square to e1 and use the e-file right away. Sometimes the even idea is to put the rook on e6, sacrifice in exchange to get access to the light squares. And also there are other ideas in the position such as h4, such as d6, sacrificing a pawn, and it is incredibly difficult for black to defend. If he goes bishop d6, white plays knight to c4, the knight comes back, g4 let's say, queen drops back to d1, and now what to do? There's the threat knight takes d6 followed by bishop e5, so let's say black goes rook c8, and already rook e6 comes in with tremendous power. Black cannot take the rook. This would lead to immediate disaster here, but otherwise what do? The bishop is attacked, and if the bishop retreats, then white can follow up in different ways. So this here, computer right now says rook e2. Okay, this was not what I was intending, but well, Then if bishop d6 again, you could double. There are different ways to play this position. Either case, just to show you that white has a lot of different resources here and ideas. Probably best is for black to go bishop f6. And now white plays h4 and opens up the pawn structure a bit more on the king side. The best black can do is something like rook f7 now, takes on g5, bishop takes c3, pawn takes, queen takes g5. At least black reaches an endgame here, but he's a clear pawn down and white should be winning here. So rook a1 was a really good move. Another good move, but a bit more unusual, is the move g4. Now, black cannot take en passant because of the queen takes g3. Queen e5 is a very strong threat, and bishop d6 can be answered with bishop e5. Bishop takes is forced, queen takes e5, and now white is too centralized and black cannot defend himself. Queen f6 is the move you want to play, but it fails due to this nice little move, knight d7, forking knight and rook, and that's a game winner. So g4 or rook a1 in this position would have been a bit stronger than the move that Caruana played, rook a1. Now Carlsen played bishop d6 quickly, and this was the critical moment of the game. White still has a large advantage here and definitely the better practical chances, but he has to act fast. And Caruana played a slow move here, h3, and this is not what the position demands. He needs to go forward. Queen h5 is the move you want to play, and it's a good move here as well. The queen gets closer to the black king, and black is really struggling here. The logical move would be bishop g6. Now white can play queen h3, that would be good, or queen h6, threatening mate, rook f7, now rook fe1. Black can drive the queen back with bishop f8, but it doesn't change the nature of the position. The queen comes back to f3, oh well, and now white plays knight to c4, and there are still all these ideas in the position, such as h4, such as rook e6, queen can come back. Black is really passive, and this bishop, as I said, is an absolute monster here on the long diagonal. Doesn't look good, does not look good for black. Probably in this position he should rather play queen f8 and give up the g-pawn, but also this looks quite bad, obviously. Probably the best in this position, instead of bishop to g6, is to play queen e8 and give up the g-pawn right away to force a trade of queens. But in the endgame here, black will be also struggling as he's losing the pawn on f4, and white will be up a pawn with good winning chance, I think, even though black, with the opposite color bishops, also retains drawing chances. Anyway, queen h5, very promising move. Another good move here is knight to c4. Also this move looks logical to bring the knight back. Caruana was probably afraid of g4 and stuff like that, but really not much is happening here. Easy for me to say with the aid of the computer, of course, but well, what can I say? That's my job here, analyzing the game. White is completely fine. Queen to d2, queen h4, h3, white is safe, and then the black weaknesses are going to tell once again. Probably best here would be to go f3 instead, and I can see that this looks a little bit dodgy, but also here white can simply ignore it, rook fe1, and his play against the black king will be stronger. The black king is much more exposed than the white king in this position. Let's return to the game and see what happened. h3, and what's the drawback? Well, now black can defend against all these threats and bring the queen to a much better place. Queen e8, covering h5, bring the queen to g6. And now suddenly black has organized himself and he is okay. In fact, the whole advantage is gone. As you can also see, the engine bar on the left is about equal again. Caruana took on d6, queen takes, and now he plays h4 to open up the pawn chain here on the king side. But after g takes h4, white has to take on f4, and we get into his endgame, which is very close to draw. White is still pushing a bit, but Carlsen, to be honest, didn't have major difficulties to hold this now. He went h5, a good move, so in case white takes, black can sort of trap the rook on g4. So Caruana played rook 1 instead. Now bishop g4, rook f6, rook takes, bishop takes, king to f7, bishop takes h4. White has regained the pawn finally. He has this passer on d5, but this is not enough. Black goes rook e8 now, and if the rooks come off, it's an immediate draw due to the opposite color bishops, which have a huge drawing tendency. So white keeps the rooks on the board, but it doesn't matter. Black has enough play here. Rook to e2, and the players agreed to a draw pretty soon. Now d6, last trick. Don't take on b2, because then rook takes g4 is a winner. And d7, and white wins a piece in the game. But okay, not with Carlsen. Of course, rook d2 was played, stopping the pawn. And here nothing white can do. So Caruana played rook to g5, offered a draw, which was accepted because after rook takes d6, you can easily see the position is completely symmetrical and therefore equal. Huge missed opportunity for Fabiano Caruana. Excellent opening preparation, putting pressure on the time, putting pressure on the position. Carlsen maybe mixed up moves with this move g5. A strange move by the world champion, weakening his king in a such long-term manner, and then Caruana could not capitalize on it. First this inaccuracy, rook ad1, and then this very surprising move h3. Much too slow in the position, not what the position demanded, and it gave all of his advantage, all his hard work away in one single move. But this is how chess is. Sometimes you build up an advantage and you can spoil it all in just one move. So missed chance for Caruana. That means after 8 games we still have a draw. 4-4 is the current score, and game number 9 is on Wednesday, and then again Magnus Carlsen with the white pieces. If you would like to be notified when I publish my next analysis, then please subscribe to the channel, and I wish you a very good evening. Until then, bye bye.